So this presentation is called Unlocking Inclusion, How to Get Started with ALI Testing. How many of you know why it became ALI testing instead of accessibility? One. I'm glad I brought a slide then. Okay, somebody clever, like, we need to shorten accessibility, right? The first 10 times I was writing it down, I spelled it wrong. So what they did was that they took the word accessibility, and then they took the first letter and the last letter, that's A and Y. And then they were counting everything in between, so that's accessibility. That's 11 letters, and then they put it together. And that's how it became ALI. Ta-da. So I had to look it up the first time our UX said, we need to do accessibility, or we need to do ALI testing. So this is a beginner's crash course. When we found out this year that we needed to be compliant to something called accessibility, we were like, whoa, how do we do that? We got some help, and I want to share this help with you so you can get started if you are not started yet. So how many of you work in public sector? Oh, a few. So you probably know more about this subject than I do, so we should talk afterwards. But in the private sector, it has become a thing as well. All right. Really short introduction. My name is Camilla. I work for a company called Mjølner. For those of you who know Nordic mythology, that's the hammer of the god Thor that always hits its target and comes back. This is a consultancy, so it's like a consultant, hitting its target and coming back. So I work as a consultant for a company called Nordlys, where I'm part of a quality team where we ensure quality for a TV and streaming app, like you know them, like Netflix and Disney and stuff. So I work with everything in QA. Like I said, I'm a generalist. I do a little bit of strategy process. I do hands-on test analysis and design. I do manual testing. I do test automation. I just love it. Not 2 days are the same. I live in the second largest town in Denmark called Aarhus, and even though it's the second largest, we are only around 400,000 inhabitants. So still a fairly small city. My guilty pleasure is something we have in Denmark and a very few other countries. It's licorice with ammonium chloride in it. It sounds crazy. I just love it. I brought some with me from Denmark, so if you visit in the speaker's corner afterwards, you can have a taste if you dare. Or just come talk to me. So, why do we need to do ALI testing? There are two very important whys and then some bonus whys. So the most important why is we need to include the ones with disabilities. With permanent and temporary disabilities, we need to include everybody in our solution. But my claim is, and this is the second why, if we do this, we will actually make the solution better for everyone, because we get a brand new perspective and we get to change the app in ways that will be useful for everybody. The bonus wise, so hopefully you will avoid a fine, but you shouldn't do it to avoid a fine, you should do it for your users, right? We haven't seen any fines yet in Denmark, at least not in the private sector, so we don't know how it will look, but it will, I mean, worth saying that it will be huge. You will get a brand new testing hat. You will get a brand new perspective, brand new competencies. That's a bonus as well. You know, you can't, with everything, as with everything else, you can't build in, you can't test in quality. You need to build it in. So, you need to become best friends with front-end developers, with your UX, with your designers. That's a bonus as well. And maybe, just maybe, you will also beat the competitors if they haven't created the apps accessible. So, most of you, when you think about disabilities, you will think about people with permanent disabilities like being blind, being deaf, people with physical disabilities or even cognitive disabilities. And that's a huge part of it. But another part of it is the ones with the temporary disabilities. Like if you have a broken arm and you only have one arm to use, it can be really tricky sometimes using our solutions. If you forgot your glasses at home, you're not seeing that well. It might be difficult to use our solutions, then you need to do something. If the Wi-Fi is bad, that's actually also a disability. Or if you're just elderly. I mean, we create solutions for Flow TV. Our average age of our users are like 80. No, I don't know. But it's high. So around 1 out of 5 of our users have a disability. That's a lot. That's 20% of our users. For us, maybe even more, because we have a lot of elderly users. And if you saw Goiko's presentation this morning, you also have to count the 4% lizards. So it becomes a huge number. Why now? Well, for the public sector, this European Accessibility Act came as of June 2022. So those in the public sector have been undergoing this for a while. But in the private sector, this year as of June, some of the solutions need to be applicable to the European Accessibility Act as well. So that's, of course, the official. This is, we need to live up to the requirements, to the law. But I also think that digitalization is playing a huge role in this. So how many of you is using your mobile phone for everything? Like, yeah, I see more hands now. I don't have a physical card on me anymore. My mobile phone is used for my driver's license, my social security card. Everything is on my phone. Imagining my mother using, oh my goodness, using her phone for everything, that's really tricky for her. So we need to make our solutions more inclusive. So, just really short about our world. As I said, we create TV and streaming app. This is the front page of it. It looks like any other TV and streaming app out there. So there's a lot of assets and you can play them and do stuff. It's not important. We are on 7 platforms. So we support Chromecast, we support Android devices, we support Google and Android TV, we support Apple devices, we support Apple TV, we support Samsung TV, and we support browsers. And why am I saying this? Well, it's because it's really tricky building in accessibility afterwards, and we need to do it on 7 platforms, and they don't share code base. So we have a huge task ahead of us. So, we were told this year as of the beginning that we also need to be compliant because we are a TV and streaming solution. There is this different guidelines telling you how to live up to the European Accessibility Act. So this is one of them, the really good name of EN3005. Okay, never mind. And then there's most of you might have seen the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. How many of you have tried opening them and reading them? Yeah, did you make sense of them? Yeah. You don't need to be able to read that text out there, but it is wall of text, wall of text, wall of text, wall of text. I just brought an example. This is just lovely for a tester. So what it says is, for us to create a meaningful sequence, headings and list items must follow a logical sequence, making sense to the user even when read without visual reference. Okay, how the heck do I test that? Logical, making sense. If I read those requirements or those guidelines, I would say this is not testable here. That's a no-go. So how did we react? Fortunately, at our company, we have this test community, a group of testers working on different projects, and we got together and we said we had to do something. So we got in a consultancy that has been specialized in reading the Web Content Accessibility Guideline and the European Accessibility Act and trying to understand it. They had been working with it for 10 years and said that we still don't fully understand it. But we have simplified this for you. So keep it simple, stupid. We have these 5 rules for you. If you follow these 5 rules, you will live up to the European Accessibility Act and avoid approximately, or you will, you will solve 80 to 90% of your issues. Okay, 5 things that we need to remember to solve 80 or 90% of the issues. That's good. And this is what I want to give to you today. If you don't remember anything else from this talk, maybe the ammonium chloride thing, but then let it be the next slide. Because I will give to you the 5 things that they taught us to bring home and start doing, because doing something is better than doing nothing. So first of all, contrast. You don't see that well. Contrast is extremely important in your app. Oh, sorry. There it is, contrast. But also, you know, when using your apps on your phone, you know that color is extremely important. So if you see something that is red, you know, okay, something is wrong here. If you see something is yellow, okay, maybe this is a warning to me. We use colors to communicate to our users. So if we start thinking about how we're using the colors, we're not only helping the ones that need high contrast, we are helping everybody. Text. So the European Accessibility Act says a lot about headlines needing to be in the right order. Text needs to be placed close to the components that they belong to. They need to be clear, they need to be understandable. Yes, that's really, really good. And that's also really, really good for those who don't have disabilities. It's good for everybody that we start thinking about the text in our solutions. Scaling. We need to be able to scale our solutions 200%. That's a UX nightmare, I tell you. But scaling is good also for those without disabilities, because if you were on very little screens, screens are becoming larger and larger and then smaller again. If you're on small screens, some people are actually scaling some of our solutions a little bit. You need to be able to handle that. So it's extremely important for those with disabilities, but also important for the rest. Navigation. So people with physical disabilities especially need to set up external devices to navigate through our solutions. It could be a joystick, a keyboard, whatever. So you need to be able to do that as well. Especially the focus, where are you in the app right now, is especially important. But that's also important for all our TV products. When you navigate around with your remote control, where am I right now? If that's unclear, it's unclear to everybody. And then the last thing, that is primarily for those with disabilities, is the screen reader. That's the hardest thing to test, actually, trying to put yourself in the shoes of someone who needs everything read aloud. Yes, so these 5 subjects, if you think about those in your products, you're in a good place. You might avoid up to, a lot. So, what did we do? First of all, our product owner said, oh, could you please create this gap analysis of our products as they are right now? We need to find out where we are with this accessibility. So what they were actually asking for were a list of bugs, right? But it sounds better to say gap analysis. Okay, so we did that. We took our Android devices and our Apple devices, and we created a gap analysis. So we delivered a huge list of bugs. So that was an eye-opener for them to see that our app was not accessible at all. Sorry. So the next thing that we have to look into, what do we do on new features when we add something to our existing product? And there we need to think about these 5 areas. We need to build it in from the beginning. We need to drink beer with UX designers and front-end developers to make sure that this is already built into the app. So that's where we start. With all the newest things that we add to the app, we need to make sure they are accessible. We need to talk about how do we live up to these 5 rules. But we also have a huge problem because we have this legacy. We have this old part of a solution. So how do we handle that? We can't handle all 7 platforms at the same time. So we went in and we defined the critical user journey. So in our solution, it's getting the people logged in, finding an asset, and start playing it. That's the main purpose of that. That's the way everybody is going. So we need to start making that one compliant. And then we need to document the rest. That's extremely, extremely important, that if we get taken out for a review at some point in time, that we have documentation on what we have chosen to do, but especially what we have chosen not to do, and why. Because then we might get a little bit more slack in the review, and a little bit more time to fix. Oh, crap. Sorry. So I'm going to give you some examples of what we found just to inspire you and to tell you what we actually saw. So first of all, the contrast. You cannot see contrast if it's high enough with your eye, so there we had to use the built-in tools. And what we got was that we had, it wasn't that bad actually, because the UX and designers had been thinking about the colors. So we got 3 failed and 8 nearly passed on just the login screen. That's okay. And actually, the funny part was that this is our login screen. So you see we have, it's a pretty standard login screen. We have username, password, login, and you've forgotten your password stuff. So what we got was that this part failed on the contrast part. But that's a disabled button. The contrast would never be high on that button because that's the point of it. And actually, absolutely right. The accessibility access, that's allowed. So if something is disabled, you're allowed to have lower contrast. So it was a false negative, actually, and that's also something to be aware of. So as I said, contrast wasn't that bad. We tried to put our app through a color blindness filter because it's hard for us to imagine how our app looks like when you're colorblind. I still don't know if this is the right picture, but this is what we got out, and we saw, okay, maybe our contrast is good enough, but we have problems because our logo almost disappeared. Do we want that? Maybe not. And then for the scaling part, which was the fun part, this is our Chromecast controller. So when you cast something from your phone, you will get this controller to control your cast. So we scaled it. Do you see a problem? Maybe 2, maybe 3. The buttons were completely overlapping. Some of them were totally useless. You couldn't use them, you couldn't click them. And actually this happened on small screens, scaling just a little bit as well, that some of the buttons became unusable. So this, as I said, was a UX nightmare. They've been trying to clean it up, and now it's better, but it's still a nightmare. The next one was with the text, still a scaling. So this is a screen where we tell the user that we are saving data about them. We need to tell them that. And then we did the scaling. You see any problems? There are several. So first of all, we were truncating the text. So it just disappeared. How are you supposed to know what that text is saying? You don't. So that was one problem. But actually, when doing the scaling, we saw problems that we didn't see that had actually nothing to do with scaling, but just changing the perspective, we saw that we had other problems. And this is one of them. This is the link saying, read the terms here. But where is this link leading you? Would you be safe to press that link? Maybe not. So actually, links need to tell the user, where am I leading you? Are you safe if you click this link? Where are you going? So that was another problem that we solved just by changing the perspective. This is it's a tracking screen actually that you can't use our TV app outside of Europe. So this is telling that we are tracking your location. We scaled it. Any idea what the problem is here? Any idea? Sorry? Yeah, something disappeared. Yeah, some of the text, but even more important, the button. The button is gone. And there was no scrolling. So the user got stuck. This was a critical error. So if they were to come to the screen, they could go nowhere. It was gone. So the last scaling example I have is another funny one. This is our player. So this is what you see when you play Float TV, and we did the scaling. Any ideas what the problem is here? Didn't scale, right? Actually, one button did. So you could record. No. So very different and very typical issues, I guess, when doing scaling that you need to look out for. Then there was the navigation. We had to tell the product owner, sorry, this is blocked. We cannot test it. We could simply not navigate through the app by using, we connected a Bluetooth keyboard, just trying to go through it with a tabulator wasn't possible. So this is our login screen on an iPad, and we connected the keyboard, and we had a cursor in the username field, and we pressed tabulator, and this is what happened. We went into an infinite loop between username and password. I have no idea why, but that happened. And we couldn't get out of it. It was just stuck there. You couldn't tap yourself out of it. So also, really critical issue. So the screen reader, really, really hard thing to do. It takes a long time to learn how to put yourself in the shoes of someone that is blind and listening to what is actually being said. And does this make sense? But we did see some issues that were worth mentioning. So all your components need to have these three things, name, role, value, in order for the screen reader to make sense of it. So back to our login screen, was a pretty central topic for us. You know this kind of button is where you have your password is masked, and when you push the button, you get it clear text, so you can see if you made any mistakes. So when we were to put focus on that field, the screen reader would say, picture, button, group. Picture, button, group. Okay, what does that tell me? So you don't know if that's that eye, or if it's a login button, or if something completely different. So how is the user supposed to navigate through that? Change of language, suddenly. I mean, the screen reader would read our application in Danish most of the time. But then we had this issue, again on the login screen, in the button it says, read more here. And when we activated that with the screen reader, it would change to English and say, link, her. Link her. No, I would rather not. So totally rubbish as well. So, getting stuck, we had this progress bar. Unfortunately, I can't show the example, but if you were to get focus on that, it would simply get stuck. It wouldn't let go of the focus again. You couldn't move it anywhere. So that was a really critical one. Irrelevant stuff. Oh my goodness, when you walk through with the screen reader and you hear all the irrelevant stuff being read aloud, that's a lot. But that really makes you think about, do we have the right things in our UI? Do we have the right groupings? Do we have the right components? Do we have things that are there several times? Do we have enough? Do we have too many components, texts, whatever? That's the screen reader gives you that perspective where you really think about, what is it that we are showing to the user, or not showing, talking out loud? So this was examples of our journey. Now we have a huge task ahead of us. We need to use these 5 bullets, as I told you about. We need to build it in. We need to test for it. And why are we doing it? We're doing it to make our solutions available to everybody, to the ones with permanent disabilities, temporary disabilities, the lizards, the ones that are not using our apps like they are supposed to, not out of bad will, but just simply because they don't understand it, maybe. We will make the solution better to everybody if we do this. This is what I claim. Avoiding the fines. It's also a nice one to take with you. I like getting new testing hats on. I like getting new competencies. This was a really eye-opener for me, that taking on this brand new perspective made me see a lot of things in our app that I was actually blind to before, because I've been testing it 1,000 of times, doing manual regression testing. And I stopped finding bugs. You know, I got blind to bugs. But this new testing hat, this new perspective, showed me that there are still many problems in our app. I was just blind to it. So that was a great takeaway for me. I like drinking beers, so becoming best friends with the UX and front-end developers, really nice. And maybe, just maybe, we will be able to beat some of the competitors. So the last thing I want to say to you is about the future, because everybody at this conference is talking about AI. This talk had nothing with AI. I don't want to be left outside, so I brought a slide on AI. I had to ask ChatGPT, what will become of me in the future if I do accessibility testing? So it said, AI will help identify missing labels, poor contrast, and improper focus order in mobile apps. It will suggest fixes, simulate screen reader behavior, and improve testing coverage. And now the important part. But human judgment will still be essential for context, usability, and ethical decisions. And with those words, I'm going to thank you for joining this presentation.
Thank you very much, Camilla. So let's see the questions. What do we have? First question, can you recommend some tools to measure accessibility?
Oh, so unfortunately we are not that far yet, but on Android and Apple devices, we have been using all the built-in tools, especially for contrast and for the screen readers. We just use the tools that are already there on the device that are supported by Apple and Google, and they work pretty well. For all the other stuff, we've actually been testing it manually because we think it's important to get that insight in the beginning. What is the problems in our app, to see the other perspective, to try to walk in those shoes. And you don't get that by using the tools, so the tools will come next. So figuring out what can we automate, what makes sense to automate, and where do we need to do, as the AI told us, to look at the human perspective of this, the ethics of it. Mm-hmm. So my best recommendation until now is use the built-in tools that is already there on the platforms.
Is it the answer for the next question, that can you automate accessibility testing?
The AI answered that question, and I am actually agreeing to some extent, but not all of it. Yeah.
Okay, let's jump into the next one. What were your greatest hurdle in making your already built apps to make them Ellyton compatible?
Yeah, I mean, the amount that you need to do when you already have an existing app is huge, because you need to, together with the, of course, first you need to agree on the process. How are we going to build this in? What are we going to focus on? How do we interpret these 5 areas of the European Accessibility Act? But then the UX and front-end developers, they need to build these libraries of components so that they can reuse it, so it becomes cheaper in the future. And that's a huge task, especially if you, like us, have 7 platforms on the product. So that's a big, big hurdle for us to make it compliant on the existing solution in all.
Okay, let's see. Bernardo's question, which tool do you use to test for contrast issues? The one that gave false negatives?
It was a contrast tool built into Xcode that we used to test on the Apple devices.
Okay. Why are different tools showing different Elly results? X-Wave, VoiceOver, Level Access. They are working off the same Elly rules.
I'm not sure I understand the question correctly, but as I hear the question is that if you test the same thing with 2 different tools, it will give different results, maybe. But we haven't actually done that, you know. Okay. So yeah. So I wouldn't be able to answer that question. But if some of you have, I would be really interested in that insight and that perspective.
Okay, let's see the last question for your presentation. How do you make a blind-friendly website aside from the user just using text to voice dub? Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that we can do and try to put ourselves in the user's shoes, try to use this voiceover thing when you test. It takes a long time, and we only do it on major releases, because if you have to do it every time, you are drowning in it. But my best advice to you is to take in a blind person. If you have that possibility, if there's some consultancy that do these kind of things, that they come in and test your solution. And they can tell you, we had this guy in who was completely blind, and he tested our website. And he did it with a sense of humor, but it was very, very eye-opening and interesting to see what he actually found compared to what we thought that we found. Okay, Camilla, thank you very much for the enlightening presentation. It was great.
Thank you.